and thank you so much for joining in today. As you are aware, this is a roundtable session which is focused on cybersecurity, and this roundtable session is on back of the annual ENR program which KPMG conducts upon every year. We are in the 11th year edition today, which is called Enrich 2020. And given the current circumstances, this program is completely being carried out virtually. I'm really happy to have today distinguished industrial specialists, professionals who have joined on the panel today along with me. I've got Puneet Bapna, who is joining in from London. Thank you so much, Puneet, for taking this time out. Puneet is a professional who works for British Petroleum, and in his current role of being head of application security, data security, and GRC, brings in a lot of relevant experience when it comes from a cybersecurity perspective. Out of his strong industry-wide experience, more than 10 years has been spent in energy and natural resources, largely oil and gas industry, whereby he has spent significant amount of time looking at the enterprise applications, the GRC portfolios, and many other areas. Puneet, thank you so much for being over here today. We definitely would get a lot of inputs today from you as we go through the roundtable discussion today. Thanks for joining.
Yep.
Thank you. Along with Puneet, we have got Manoj. Manoj is head of technology at HMEL, one of the big refineries in India, which has been really at the core of the center of the entire production of the oil, petrochemicals, and related areas. And he again brings in a very rich experience of 20 plus or 23 plus years spanning across business application systems, ERP systems, and amongst that, almost 11 plus years experiences within the energy and natural resources sector, again, oil and gas sector. And with that depth of experience, I'm sure, Manoj, you will be able to share with our audience today a wealth of information on how the cyber risk has been progressing. And you bring in a very diverse set of background, bringing in someone who comes in from an accountancy as an educational background, your ability to assess risk, both from a financial perspective as well as now with your experience in technology, would be a great outcome for our session today. So thank you so much, Manoj, for joining in today.
Thank you, Atul.
Okay. And along with Manoj and Puneet, we have got Pranav. Pranav is someone who is again experienced in providing professional services. His career spans across 19 plus years. He's been operating across multiple sets of industries. But over the last few years, he's been very focused on driving cyber programs in energy and natural resources sector. So Pranav, thank you so much for being out over here. I look forward to your kind advice to the larger population who will be listening on to our roundtable as we launch this out.
Sure. Thank you, Atul. Happy to be part of this esteemed panel.
Thank you. So let me get started. I will try moderating the session because that's my role. But I also come up with a statutory warning. I am a consultant by profession, so I will come with various data points just to make sure my role of consultant continues to be there. So let me start with first data point. And as consulting organization, we do quite a lot of studies. The first one which I wanted to bring across is looking at cyber holistically. Linking it back to the theme of the event, which we are running this time on Enrich 2020. You may be aware this year when KPMG is driving this program, the focus is on net zero future, which means how can we bring upon net zero ambition for organizations to be a reality. And technology is going to play a very important role, very significant role in attaining the same. Now, technology is transforming at such a significant pace that almost all the conversations that we as KPMG, as a consulting firm, are having with the board of directors, with the audit committees, one of the biggest risk areas which has been constantly emerging is saying that, we're going on such a rapid pace of adoption of technology, don't know what possible risks are emerging because of that. Maybe we are blindsided to that. And that's what's causing an inquisitiveness both at the board level as well as audit committee levels, as well as the regulators. Our study reports tells us that for last 5 years, cyber has been the top five issues or the risk issues which globally the CEOs have looked upon. In fact, 2020, as everyone knows, has been a very interesting year. And we had come up with a report right at the beginning of 2020, where just to share with everyone, cybersecurity was considered to be number three risk globally. But we realized post pandemic, there will be different priorities. And it did move down, but it stayed in the top five. So it's now moved to number five with supply chain, environmental picking up a more higher momentum in the risk portfolio. But it's still there in the top five. And I wanted to start over there to bring in some thoughts from Puneet. I can get started with you. How are you seeing the key stakeholders, the audit committees, or the boards actually looking at cyber risk at this point of time across the organization? And what's the kind of a horizon that you see now it's going to emerge from here on?
Sure. Thanks, Atul. So, first of all, let me put a disclaimer that I'm sort of coming into the discussion from a BP standpoint, but my views not necessarily sort of tie into what a management sort of puts forward as a key theme, right? But I'm happy to share or put my views as to what we see, which is coming out from our board of directors and what our different committees are sort of saying. So, cyber as a risk has been sort of called out by BP for the last number of years as one of the group sort of risks we sort of track, and we are sort of trying to mitigate and reduce that risk across the lines and ranks of the organization. And especially with the advent of COVID and what we see going forward with the climate change initiatives which are going on, and with the kind of renewed pressure which the oil and gas industry is under. Um, if you look here in London, there is a very heightened risk of um, groups like Extinction Rebellion, who are trying to pressurize companies like, um, yeah, the big fours, not the big, the super majors like BP, Shell, again, Total and all, to really sort of come forward with their strategies as to how soon can we adopt the net zero ambition. But at the same time, the pressure on us from our stakeholders is to keep the profitability alive, right? So you have this dual challenge of meeting the net zero targets, but at the same time, how can you be relevant in the market, still grow at that 10 to 15% margin, which all of our shareholders expect us to grow, and then be cognizant of this fact that none of the risks which were there before all of this started are not going anywhere. And cyber is definitely, if not the biggest, it is actually the top five, as you said, right? So uh, our board of directors, our organizations, our main board audit committee, all of them are keenly aware of that. I think apart from the cyber risk, the regulatory requirements or the regulatory pressures are also not going anywhere. One thing which has been the constant theme is that the regulatory pressure has only increased. And that is again because of many reasons, be it the type of financial frauds which are happening across the industry, or because of the GDPR or other privacy regulations which have come in, right? So, all in all, I would say cyber risk, which is a broad term, which has many sort of legs to it, it is a key priority for us as we sort of, I hopefully say, come out of this pandemic in 2021 with the news around vaccines and all, and it would continue to be a theme which we would continue to track and invest.
Okay, thank you, Puneet, for making those points. I think there were some two or three key observations which I made. I think one, which you talked upon, saying how the ambition of the organizations continue to be on net zero but maintain the profitability, yet operating in an environment where cyber risk is live and here, and it
Yeah.
being amongst the top five. And how does it pan out post pandemic with the sight or possibly the light looking at the end of the tunnel, one end of the tunnel? So brilliant points. Anuj, let me bring that point across to you, and also bring in an additional perspective. I think Puneet did talk upon on the big organizations, how they are getting challenged across on this one. But let me add on an additional dimension, saying when we talk of energy companies, and I'm not really referring here oil and gas just, but maybe you can give a perspective from oil and gas. Typically, the sector gets classified as a critical infrastructure. Any impact which happens onto this sector, any part of the sector, has a significant ramifications across the country or economical environment. And that's where today we tend to hear that cyber has become again a way which may be coming across with active geopolitical situations playing across. And that's bringing an additional dimension to it. So happy to hear your thoughts, Manoj, on how are you seeing it, and what's been your thinking around in audit committees, in boards, and those conversations, how it's being put.
Yeah, Atul, I think it's a very relevant questions, and especially for energy sector. See, these companies are of national interest. They protect the energy for national, and closing down of these company because of cyber, it has its own impact, irrespective of you are a public sector company or you are a private sector company. Very, very capital oriented companies. Capital, it's not a e-commerce company with few thousands or few $1 million you can start. It's a very, very capital intensive industry, and you need to make operations very, very safe. Okay, when I talk in terms of the safety does not mean the physical safety or the process safety. It comes to the cyber safety also, because what we are talking today, lot assets are getting connected. Lots are in every company people are talking about the digital, okay, adoption of the digital technology. And in digital technology, there are two set of technology. One is external environment, for example, your customer, vendor. Another is the internal, where most of the technologies are getting implemented. For example, your in our case, in our refinery. So where operation technologies and information technologies are coming together, the kind of expectation people had from information technology, the same kind of expectations are there on the operation technology. That, for example, this application should be available over internet. People are talking about the remote maintenance, remote monitoring. So it means all those operational systems are available on internet. So with those kind of a complexity, with geo positions of your organization, so it becomes utmost important for us to run our day-to-day operations, cyber safe. And not only run your cyber safe in the digital transformation journey also. You cannot put the cyber as kind of a retrofit. Okay, that should be there in the design itself. But whether do we have that mindset? Because most of the time people try to retrofit. Yes, this project has been done. Now let's see whether enough security measures are there or not. So keeping our industry in oil and gas and of most important for any country. It becomes really, really important to run the operation cybercafe. I think most of the CIOs or the CISO, they are not worried about if some projects are getting delayed, but what wake them up in the night is if something goes wrong on the cyber per se, of course, monetary loss, and importantly the reputation loss. Those kind of things comes into the picture. So and it is true. I would say it is true for all the sector, but energy, especially, as I said, high capital intensive and very people oriented. It becomes at most important for all of us.
Thanks so much, Manoj. You brought in again 3 great points. I think the first, you talked upon how information technology and operational technology are coming closer and closer, and that's a great point which I would like to get some more thoughts from the panel today, because that's resulting in a cusp of dealing with cyber with a new lens to be looked upon. That's a big one. The second point which you were highlighting is the entire reputational association impact associated. And maybe I will just extend the argument, because energy and natural resources is a sector where if things go wrong, the human life is at risk. and that could be a potential implication which a cyber incident could trigger off. So it many times it gets unfolded in a very very large way, which emerges upon. And the third one which you talked is digital transformation, and beautifully you said that can cyber be brought in by design rather than being brought in upon as an afterthought. And technically we're calling it shift left. How can you move more left rather than bringing it rather later in the value chain? So absolutely, these are great points, great to get started upon on our conversation. Let me bring in some thoughts from Pranav at this moment. Pranav, you as a professional advisor, when you interact with most of these energy companies, are you seeing these trends also shifting at this point of time, as what Puneet and Manoj very beautifully articulated around? What's been some of the areas that you have been getting to hear upon from the industry at this moment, Pranav?
Absolutely. So, Atul, I echo the thoughts that both Puneet and Manoj has beautifully articulated here. That's the same thing we are also hearing from other energy sector measures that we are working with. In fact, the point on cyber being the key agenda for board and the management, and how we are faring against that. So that is critical for most of the management and boards nowadays. That is definitely there. In addition to that, the point that Manoj raised on IT and OTPs, because now everywhere everything is becoming digital, and digital has been a keyword. Everyone wants to go digital way and adopt, but at the same time there are also unforeseen risks associated with those digital transformation journeys that organizations are faring. What was relatively easier in IT in terms of controlling the IT landscape and putting cyber controls in place is not as easier in OT, both because of multi-vendor scenario, lack of standardization, or even relatively less skilled workforce. So all these challenges are also people are seeing in OT. Now with OT, there is so many data points that organizations are generating. There is bunch of data that they get, and to use that data in a very useful manner, they need to connect it to the corporate network to apply analytics, to understand how optimally are we performing, where are the challenges, and all that associated business logic around it. To effectively utilize that OTPs, they need to connect this to the corporate network so that whole bunch of business processes can use that. But that is also faring some bit of a challenge in terms of how cyber safe those OT environments are and how we can make it cyber safe. Because like you rightly pointed out, with small changes in OT configurations, it can be a disastrous consequence in terms of even human life. We have seen, some of the scares that we have recent year, like Fukushima and all. While causes were different, but similar things can be enacted because of the cyber things as well. So it's very important for all the organizations now, and they are thinking very actively upon that. And this comes up very frequently in our conversations with those organizations as well. So that's what
Great.
has been the common thread.
Great. I think thanks so much, Pranav, for bringing those points. And I think you beautifully re-articulated some of those areas which have been picked upon, specifically on IT, OT, and digital transformation. So let me just pick that theme and go to Puneet again. Puneet, I wanted to bring a bit of a different thought as well to it, and overlay this IT, OT conversation there. There's a study report which got published in October 2020, which says that this is a sector, and it doesn't classify as oil and gas or power, but across the entire energy sector, there's an attack which happens every 30 minutes. And that's the claim. Now, not every cyber attack goes through, so it's an attack which is just happening at every 30 minutes. And the nature of the attacks are constantly becoming more and more mature, more and more advanced, which are bypassing or overcoming the traditional approaches which were being considered to be very safe and prudent. And there could be various motives out over here. One of those which we get to hear specifically from a utilities provider is there is a direct impact on a city, on a country, if the utilities goes down. Similarly, from an energy provider, if energy, there is an impact. We heard some of parts of the region, there was an impact which happened not too long ago, and it started having an impact on the economical feasibility of the country. It did happen. So, with that kind of environment where we are operating today, and then work from home came in because of COVID. So we had to bring in some more relaxations in the traditional approach where there was a very strong perimeter. The perimeter is no longer there. Uh, it's all becoming a bit more convoluted at this point of time. So, I wanted to come to you saying that what are some of the measures which organization can take at this point of time to deal with this kind of a sophisticated attack which is happening? And maybe just to get some thoughts, is collaboration across the industry one of the key ways which industry should be looking, which is more sharing more knowledge, actively sharing what is going wrong or what learnings are. So it will be good to hear, Puneet, from your perspectives.
Yeah. No, thanks for that, Atul. So I would maybe start with the second part, I think, around collaboration. So yes, um, I think oil and gas industry does a good job of collaborating and sharing information. Again, there are some groups, oil and gas cybersecurity network, and other oil and gas groups in which CISOs of all of these companies sort of collaborate, and they share information which can be shared. Of course, all of us are competitors at some point of time, and we cannot be sharing certain critical incidents or other information. But yes, there are those collaboration sort of setups in place. Can we do more? Yes. And I think that is where the collaboration with the industry vendors and other ecosystem partners, which we have, comes in handy, because all of these security products and all of these plethora of companies which are there who are trying to innovate, they can be startups or they can be your big vendors, right? They all need this continuous stream of information to innovate and sort of provide that industry relevant sort of solutions to our company. So yes, collaboration definitely is something which is in play. But yes, we can always do better, right? And we can always expand the number of companies which are collaborating, because sometimes we sort of are blindsided just by, yes, we would talk to these 5 companies because these are sort of scale and size of what we operate in. But then again, cyber hackers are not looking at your scale and size. They just want that entry point, and they would like to understand what can be damaged in this case. So that is on the collaboration. Coming back to your first point, what are some of the measures which companies can take? I think over the last couple of years, one thing which has come out as an industry-wide measure or principle is the principle of zero trust, right? So that, I think, in the way of digital transformation any company is taking, that is very key, that you should not trust anything, and verify every endpoint, every identity. Um, Again, the perimeter, as you said, is no longer your on premises, or for that matter, you might be in a hybrid cloud environment, right? Some of your workloads are in public cloud, some of them you are interacting with third-party SaaS solutions. You have a great IaaS sort of infrastructure running, and then you still have your legacy on-prem applications because of multiple regulatory requirements which are running in your kit, in your environment, right? And then your users can be anywhere. They can be at home, at office, at a refinery, at a ship, a vessel, or any offshore rig platform in our case, right? So we just can't sort of rely on our existing practices to sort of think and be comforted around those perimeters or those boundaries which we had sort of drawn a couple of years back. Zero trust architecture amongst all of those different areas is the need of the hour. And then trying to push those controls from a central security perspective over to those asset owners or people who are running those assets is very much the need of the hour. Security has to move towards a place wherein they are continuously monitoring and orchestrating the incidents, but the real sort of execution of all of those activities is pushed down to the first line, and that is where I would like to bring in that 3 lines of defense model, right, which has traditionally been sort of used by the compliance professional and the audit professionals. But I think security and compliance are merging, and the three lines of defense model is sort of merged. You still have a first line, which is the business who is operating all of this. Whatever controls you're trying to implement, they are there for them. They take the ownership of that more and more, so that there is little work for second and third line. But then, yes, whatever we are doing currently to verify the work of the first line, right, through our second line policies and processes and platforms, that has to radically shift in a continuous way. And that is where a lot of other digital technologies have come to fore. You can use RPA, you can use AI, ML, you can use a lot of analytic tools. But yes, I think continuously applying all of that and being on top of your control environment is the need of the hour. Can we do that? Yes, we can. Would it take time? Yes, it would take time depending upon the scale and the complexity you are looking at. But yes, it's exciting. It's exciting. I think if someone is in the cyber space right now, cybersecurity, or in the audit profession, or in the second line compliance and audit profession, I think it's a very exciting time to be in.
Thank you for making that statement, and maybe you're inspiring a lot of young minds, Puneet, to say what career choice they should be looking upon at this moment. And yeah, you're right. Technology, digital itself, and cyber within it is a very exciting moment at this
Yeah.
point of time. But I would like to double click on the point which you highlighted, Puneet, in saying that yes, zero trust is an area which is now getting more global acceptance. But how easy is that to bring upon that kind of a shift, right? Because the past was always like have a very strong outer perimeter and have a very trusted internal networks, internal environment, internal ecosystem. And many times in past, prior to the entire 2020 year, the focus used to be looking upon on saying that, hey, some of these attacks which are going through, they're going because of the internal, because there is no specific control being deployed on the internal layer. But today, there's no difference between internal and external, and that's causing a radical shift to be brought upon. So, what's your thought around the same? And how is the oil and gas industry looking? Because I like that principle of three lines of defense, and I think it's coming well together from a cyber perspective. But what timelines are you looking for zero trust to be really
Yeah.
be applicable?
I think zero trust as a principle, yes, it's great. There are different dimensions as to how can you apply zero trust, right? And zero trust has to be applied at a network level, at an identity level, at a data level, and again you have people and other sort of processes as well. So from an asset perspective, I think the company has to prioritize as to what their crown jewels are, right? So you look at identity, right? From an identity perspective, you need to look at your Active Directory. You need to look at your employees and contractors, how people are sort of connecting to your corporate network. Is there a VPN sort of solution in there? So I think lot can be done in the identity space around multi-factor, how people are authenticating, and can you sort of track all of that through analytics, right? Again, from a data perspective, you need to apply zero trust around what's your data strategy. Are you democratizing your data? Is data available for everyone to sort of work on, or is it still your data is stored on your key ERPs or your key systems, and it's very difficult to get the data out, right? Because then that would impede your ability to scale your business, because data is no longer sort of, yes, couple of people in the finance organization are sort of grappling with to understand, hey, I need to produce a dashboard for a CFO, right? Data should be available to everyone, because that is where the real sort of driver is for companies to digitalize and innovate at scale, right? Every company is sort of becoming a tech company. We might not realize, but if you hear to Satya Nadella or people like Jeff Bezos, they would say, we are no longer the tech companies. We are the platform companies who are providing the platform. Every other company in the world is trying to build on that platform and trying to serve their customers so that they can economically grow as well as provide some value back to their customers. So take, for example, oil and gas. We are trying to be a tech company who is trying to reach to multiple customers. So currently we interact with, say, 1 million customers. Our aim is to interact with 10 million customers in the next 10 years, because we know If you don't do that, I think other companies like Uber, like other companies in China, would sort of become the aggregators, and they would do what we are doing today, right? And you can already see examples. Amazon is selling lubricants on their website. People don't need to come to us. Amazon is doing that, right? Amazon is selling pharma, right? They're selling medicines. So these tech companies would eat if we won't change. And if we have to change, we have to invest in digitization. And for that, I think this zero trust is very important. As I said, you can't do that in overnight. You have to start with your key sort of systems and your key sort of areas. And then, yes, you need to have a strategy for that.
Okay, brilliant, brilliant. Thanks so much, Puneet, for bringing that perspective. And I think tech, everyone is becoming a tech company. That convergence coming in is a very, very valid point, Puneet. Thanks so much for making that point. On that note, let me move on to Manoj. Manoj, again, maybe a very similar perspective to get from you. Saying we are seeing a complete onslaught at this moment of technology adoption. And as we heard, Puneet, it's also the need of the hour. It's not just someone is doing technology adoption because someone just wants it to be, but it's the environment in which we are where it is required to be done. But yet this environment is also bringing across a lot more focusing that the risk to which we are exposed is also changing constantly. And with more and more tech adoption, the risk is also changing. We heard from Meet on zero trust, which is now a global thinking which is going around. Similarly, with pandemics coming in, with the various incidents which are happening around us, some of the perspectives which you would like to share that you have been working upon or thinking on to enhance the resilience of organizations to deal with the cyber risk today?
Yeah, I think Atul, that's an important, what you asked, the resilience. Normally, if you see, the thieves are more smarter than the police. They are more, innovative. Okay, first they introduce their mechanism, and then the police and other tech, let's say in our case, the tech companies, they adapt. So resilience to the threat is also a very, very important subject. How well prepared you are. Okay, my belief is, no company in this world they can claim that we are 100% secured with all the best of the technology, people, and the process. They adapt. It's not possible. Something, let's say if you are in the digital transformation, you are working on the RPAs or the IoTs of the world, where you are connecting more and more sensor, you are getting the programs to run your operations. Okay, so the other part, your counter is also working on the same thing. They are also understanding your behavior. They are also understanding your projects. They are also understanding your the landscape. They are understanding how the technology vendors are working in this space, and accordingly they are launching the attacks. So they are more sophisticated, and since they do the target attacks, okay, let's say so they have more knowledge, I would say. So that resilience is very, very important. We all need to take into account. And important thing is, let's say even risks are there. Risks are everywhere. That cannot be deterrent for new adoption. We all need to as I said, instead of retrofitting, it should be part of the design. But the risk, there is no risk. You tell me. Risk is everywhere in doing the business, in going to the office, at home, or in doing the business, running the operations. Everywhere the risk is there. You cannot eliminate the risk. You need to accept the risk, and you need to see how best the risk can be mitigated. So the same way in the digital also, when you start your transformation journey, of course, I'm not the big fan of the technology for the sake of adoption. In my opinion, the context of the technology is very, very important. How that how you contextualize the technology in your organization. Correct? A number of technologies are available, but are you there to adopt all the technology? In my opinion, answer is no. We need to see, how important, how you can contextualize, how you can solve your problem, with reference to that technology. And every implementation, every new technology introduction will come with its own risk. No, otherwise, we would have been in older era of on the digital side, where it would have taken years for the transformation. Now people are talking transformation very next day. And in this pandemic, we have seen, for example, the Zooms of the world, the Microsoft Teams of the world. In any company, it would have taken months, years, but to get those kind of a collaboration tool. But in this COVID situation, I think people adopted, these tools very, very next minute. Even they have not taken days to, adopt it. So to summarize, the transformation will continue to happen. People will keep on adapting the digital technology, and risks are, inherited, I would say, with any new things what you do. So the only thing is matter how you mitigate, how the resilience, and how well you can put a governance around it in terms of people, process, and technology. People part, for the internal and external, as you said, both are equal now. Both the threats are equal. So internal also people, we need to understand the behavioral part, human behavior part, how they are doing, what kind of access they have. So those things also needs to be controlled in a great, because most of the time we pay, more attention on the external factors, whether to make your perimetry strong, zero trust based systems, so many data analytics, etc. We do most of the time for external, not for the internal. But internal also, in my opinion, it's a equal, if not more, equal threat, and enough attention should be paid.
Very valid point, Manoj. Thanks so much. And I think you highlighted the importance on resilience. And resilience is now coming across all the key factors, and people is playing a very important role. In fact, on that one, I just wanted to get your views, Manoj, because now there is a thought which is going across saying that you need to build a culture. So it's not awareness, it's a cultural shift which you need to bring across. And it's happening across society, not just in the industry, because pretty much everyone is using technology so much in our today's age. And if I was to reflect back on that point and get some of your thoughts, Manoj, do you think driving such cultural interventions in organizations will be very critical, where cyber becomes a culturally driven element rather than just being taught upon? What's your view on that, Manoj?
So I think it's a very valid point, Atul, and especially for your internal strengthening, the culture play an important role. Let's say when you educate more and more people, that's a key. What this cyber, how it can impact you. People become aware, and when the people are becoming aware about those cyber, threats, they become the first reporter for you. Of course, we all have automatic systems by which the incident gets reported, alerts get generated. But your own set of people, when it comes to their DNA, they tend to report the issues. They tend to get those practices in their behavioral. For example, the USBs. Okay, people were in habit of working the USBs. People used to feel the privileges. I have access to the USB keys. And and today also, I think the USBs are the biggest or maybe the major source of those kind of threats. But how we have made their habits change. Proper communication, proper knowledge, making them understand how these kind of devices can threat to the entire organization. So the culture plays an important role. Let's say in our oil and gas, we say the safety should be your priority. Whatever you do, you need to keep the safety first. Okay. The same way, we need to ensure the culturally that whatever we do for safe operation, and the culture, the change management, and the education. I would say that plays the important role in this.
I think just one point to add, Atul. Manoj, I think you have raised a very important point. Like oil and gas industry or the energy industry in general, they have brought in the safety culture, right? Safety in everything you do, not just at the rigs, but also in the office. So that culture helps them keep them safe, right? So same type of culture needs to be developed or adopted for cyber-related work as well. I think that will go a long way. Very relevant point. Thanks a lot for bringing it up.
Absolutely. I think it's just an extension. Physical world safety and cyber safety is now somewhere getting converged.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's a brilliant point, Manoj, and thanks so much for making that point. And I like the way you talked on how something which was looked upon as a privilege can be positioned rightfully by setting the tone at the top and bringing that culture, saying it's not about privilege, it's about making sure we are having the right environment. Well, thank you, Manoj.
Absolutely. And one important point is, these cyber things are not to stop the business. It is to aid the business. But the only thing is we need to see the perspective that, okay, this team is not there to stop doing the business. Only thing is we need to change certain habits so that operations can be done in a more secure way.
Absolutely, brilliant. I know when people start talking of cyber, and I'm very passionate, the time just flies. I'm just doing a quick time check. We're getting into, I think, last 15 minutes of our conversation, but I want to switch over here. And we talked a lot on digital, and we talked somewhere around cloud also, maybe implicitly, but it's a reality today. Cloud adoption is a reality. And again, I said I'll share some study reports. As KPMG, again, we did a study report in 2020, which showcases that when organizations adopt cloud, security is not necessarily a priority. And we have seen that in the nature of the incidents which have got reported upon. But for a minute, if I was to keep that aside, I wanted to bring the focus on data, because today data is no longer just the bits and the bytes, it's resulting in a lot of value with the data is generating upon. And there is a shift which is coming upon saying, are we making sure that we are creating a trusted environment for data to be used upon? And I'm going back to that point, Puneet, which you made, that possibly your reach today is to a set of customers, and you want to increase your outreach to the set of customers. But if the data trust is not bring upon, or digital trust, which is being called today, is not being brought upon, it can actually have a significant impact on the business. And that's where globally regulations have started emerging, whether it's a GDPR, which has come in European Union, or US has looked upon on California Data Prevention Act, and various other states are coming. India itself is coming up on with the data privacy requirements out over there. So I just want to get some thoughts over here, and maybe I'll get started with Puneet, and then followed with Manoj, and then with Pranav to get thoughts on how this landscape is transforming, because it was always in past looked more from, if we are protecting from outsider, because they will come and they will disrupt something. Now it's not about disruption only, because if you really see the attacks which are happening these days, where the data goes out, there's no disruption, it's just the data which goes out, and the consequences which the organizations have to deal with are very significant. So I'll get started with Puneet. Puneet, your thoughts?
Yeah, thanks, Atul, for that. So I think you have touched on 2 points there. One is the relevance of data in the new realm, how data is defining the new business sort of opportunities for a lot of companies out there, and it no longer can be thought of as a static thing which you have in your relational databases. And yes, it's there. We have to keep it because of legal hold and all, right? So people are trying to bring all of that data out and trying to mine that, and now they're trying to sort of use that and analyze that to derive new opportunities. And the second point you made was around the security of that data, if compromised, can lead to disastrous outcomes, both from a reputational perspective, your ability to trade in the market, as we have seen with a big sort of credit rating company in the US, lately with Hilton's and Marriott's of the world, BA, and I think lately in India, I think a couple of days back, there was a big travel company for which there was an announcement that yes, a lot of customer data is out. So I think from that perspective, I would say yes, with the advent of GDPR in 2018, a lot of things have changed because GDPR is not only applicable for companies in Europe, but whichever company is touching the PII data for people who are residing in EU as a area, all those companies have to comply to GDPR. And what that has done is that has really catapulted the fact that privacy is a fundamental right to everyone. And all the companies, including the tech vendors, all the other industries who are sort of sucking in a lot of data, whether it be the customer data or any sort of matrix which you collect for people, they have to respect, right, the sovereignty of that data. And if an individual would like to not allow someone to collect that data, you have that right to go back and ask all those questions. And there are a lot of sort of things which have been defined in the GDPR directives around that. Coming back to how that has changed, I give you an example, right? So um, when you drive out on the road and you suddenly have to fill sort of petrol for your car, right? And you suddenly see a petrol station of a company A, and then just on the other side of the road, just in front of that petrol pump, you have one other company, and we all see that, right? Now, for you to make a decision and say the prices of the retail sort of petrol are same for both the stations, for you to make a decision as to would I go to company A or would I go to company B, some of the things which would go in your mind is, hey, do I trust this brand or do I trust this brand? Right? The price is the same, and I have to make a decision. And if you think that company A recently had a data breach or any other sort of issue out there in the market, that would straight away tell you, hey, I don't trust this company because they could not make sure that my data was secure with them. They had a mobile app. They were doing all sort of cool transformation with me, but they could not keep my data secure. So you know what? I'll go to the company B, not to company A. So that kind of drives that this digital trust is so real that it has got a real economic sort of angle to it, that if you're not able to establish that trust with your customers, you would lose economically at a certain point of time. And that advantage which you have, you might have sort of rolled out your mobile apps or your different channels to communicate with your customers earlier than a competitor. But then you know what? Because you could not keep up with the security of that data, you would lose out, right? So that way, companies have a real challenge to, yes, they have to innovate, they have to bring all of that data out, do all of those data lake and analytics and data science programs. But in the end, they also have to push the agenda around the cybersecurity education and behaviors for people working on the data science projects, these data lake programs, as well as each and everyone who is connected to how data is handled, stored, and sort of transported over, to really understand that this is critical. You have to handle this PII information or credit card information in a very safe and secure way. And then on the same side, yes, people cannot do this on their own because of the scale and size of the issue you are looking at. So yes, the technology would come to your helping hand. How can you automate those controls? How can you actually bring in data security controls and principles as per the shift left sort of principles to say, hey, if I don't need this PII information, I would not sort of store it. I would not create copies of this information in 5 different places. If I have to keep it encrypted in one area, I would keep it encrypted at rest as well as in transit. So I think all of those controls would come in. I won't dwell into those controls in detail, but yes, I think digital trust is a theme which I'm very passionate about. This is something we have spoken about in the company in the last couple of months, and this would be a key theme going forward. And again, this is a broad term, but it's no longer a sort of agenda for the IT teams. It's about everyone in the business. How can you establish trust with your customers, stakeholders, because everything is going digital. So that is what my thoughts are on this space.
Thanks so much, Puneet. I think I definitely believe you became very passionate on that one again. So good to see those passions coming through. And, as we get to closure, maybe I'll ask you saying, what are 2 or 3 things which you want to leave for the audiences to action tomorrow in their organization? But we'll hold on to that one at this moment because you're bringing some great points over there. But let me, on that note, move to Manoj. Manoj, we just heard some of these regulations in Europe, which have driven a completely different way to look at data. And as a country, India, we're not too far away. Every day we keep on hearing data privacy regulations are almost there. It's up in the parliament, draft act is there, which should get converted. What's been your view outlook around it? Again, from the way we talk, saying, yes, a technology side, we are talking zero trust. A business is now talking digital trust. So that's the kind of the landscape which we are covering. from no trust to build a trust with our stakeholders who really matter the most. It will be good to get your perspectives as well around the same.
So what Puneet said, I think, in Indian context, it is becoming important day by day, the digital trust. Of course, it has its own, challenges in terms of adoption. How many of us are we serious about it? Maybe government, maybe in this session or maybe in the winter session, they may pass, and this government is pushing, their best to get this thing. But do we really understand the importance of our data? In Indian context, it is, we need to understand this. We download so many mobile applications, and how many times we say no to their options. In my opinion, if you say no to their option, you will not be able to utilize, that particular application. Same way in, so it is first as an individual, we need to be cognizant. Okay, this data is important. It can be misused, so we should and should towards those who are the recipient of this data. I think the major responsibility lies to those companies who attracts the data, who capture the data. At so many places we put all the security numbers. For example, in case of India, our Aadhaar number. Do we know, whether somebody is collecting, data in this form and selling it, and selling for, a good cause, or maybe for, for the reselling, or for to boost their business, or for some misuse also, because ultimately misuse will also happen. So that becomes important for in a country like India also, where a lot of attention was not there. And I compare it with the era where we were buying the hardware, but we never in a habit of buying the softwares. Correct? We all bought the hardware in our initial days, but when you ask somebody to buy the software, I think it was a big no. And we know how to get the software done. The same way, it will happen over a period of time in India, where people first will realize the importance of their data, because the beginning will happen from them. Once you will know this is important, then you will ensure how it should be protected. And a lot of governance and regulation should be on who are the recipients of this data, to avoid reselling or to misuse.
No, brilliant points, Manoj. Thanks so much for making those points. I think country is at that tipping point with all the digital programs coming into action. Aadhaar becoming the key, or the fundamental identity mechanism, which is helping all digital transactions to go through. I think having the digital trust or data privacy is a logical next step. But I think from enterprises also, it's becoming very important. As I heard Puneet saying, this is one space where there could be direct economical impact to organizations. Otherwise, it was very difficult to quantify cyber risk implications for organizations. But with digital trust, there's a direct quantification which is feasible. And that's what's getting the boards and the other key stakeholders take a strong note of that. So thanks so much for that point. Hey Pranav, just I know we are almost on the close of the time. You focus quite a lot on emerging risk areas, and it's now what we talked upon was cloud, digital, but there are many other technologies which are making noises, right? And they may be adopted upon. One of the favorite ones which always comes upon for discussion is blockchain. I'm holding my comments, but let me put you on spot. Friend, what's your view? Because blockchain promises a lot.
No, absolutely. So blockchain is definitely one of the promising ones, and there are a lot of use cases that we are seeing in the market with its. If you look at it 1.5, 2 years back, most of the people, when they talk about blockchain, they used to talk about cryptocurrency. But nowadays, there are a lot of other use cases picking up in the market. We ourselves working on some of them. So I see that there is increase in interest in the promise that blockchain offers. We are still to some time to see the mainstreaming of blockchain, but I think it will happen. But in addition to that, if we have to talk about some other technologies like 5G is coming, analytics is already mainstream. A lot of IoT, etc., are also coming. Our houses are becoming smart. Our cars are becoming smart. With the 5G, I think all these devices becoming smart and getting connected will definitely aid a big digital revolution, in my opinion, to say the least. And if I have to join the dot with what Manoj said in terms of awareness that people have in terms of, really, is my data really that important? Should I care about privacy or should I not? But when digital invades every aspect of your life, obviously, with merely law of probability, there would be some incidents here and there, and those days are not far when you would really see that incidents happening with your loved ones or your friend circle or someone and that would probably kick in more interest or more seriousness about privacy, about keeping data safe, about what Puneet talked about, right? Security, cyber security, or privacy as a business differentiator for enterprises. I believe that revolution has kick-started in a small fashion. There are still people in blocks who are more interested, more keen about this, but with advent digital invading our life, this will become mainstay in maybe probably a couple of years. That's what I feel.
Great point, Pranav. And my only add-on point to that is people learn without going through the pain of it, even to their loved ones or near ones. That's the best situation.
I hope so.
Yeah, and let's hope for
The
that.
best analogy for that is that during this pandemic, someone who had not contracted COVID would say, it cannot happen to me.
Yeah.
Why should I do this? Once you had it, then you're like, oh, this can happen to anyone.
This is serious. Yes,
Yeah?
absolutely.
Yeah, yeah.
So,
We don't
I think
want to go that path.
we
Yeah.
all would get it in some point of time. We
Correct.
just have to be careful, and the same goes to this data security and other incidents as well.
Great. I think it's been very interesting and enriching to have this conversation and share the thoughts. But as I said, I want to wrap it up now, given we are off the time. But all the audiences who will be, looking forward to this conversation, would be very keen to listen from professionals like you, two or three tips which they can start using upon. So if it will be great to hear those tips. So Puneet, I can get started with you. Some very simple ones based on your experience, which can make a lot of difference, so that all of them can start leveraging it and contextualizing, as Manoj said. Without context, nothing really works upon. So Puneet.
Yeah. So I think giving tips and all, it's always a dangerous idea because what works for you might not work for others. But I would say from a cybersecurity perspective, if there are people who are listening who are either starting their journey or in the middle of the journey, and depending upon the size and scale of the problem they are working at, I would say you always need to understand what is the scale and what is the perimeter you're trying to protect. And as we said, it's zero trust. There's no perimeter now, but still you need to sort of start with one or two things. So identity, right? I think that's a very key area. Um, I think trying to understand your access controls, how your internal as well as external customers, vendors, suppliers are interacting with you. I think a lot of companies don't realize what is the scale and size of people who are interacting with their systems, right? So that is very important to understand your identity sort of extent. And then second tip would be if you are handling personal information, try to be very discreet. If you don't need to handle PII data, don't mess around with it because there can be consequences and you would be investing in a lot more at a later stage rather than just by not touching that data because 90% of the times people say, I need that data set, just extract it, but they actually never mean to touch it. Yeah. So don't handle personal information because there are consequences on that. That is
Brilliant.
it from my side.
Brilliant. I think the first one you touched 2 points just to make sure everyone gets it right. I think first was identity, and the second is the entire thing around third party. Because today, any organization, when it operates at a global scale, operates in an ecosystem. and the ecosystem has got partners and partners, and maybe most of the times we don't realize how that can make an organization vulnerable. So identity with access control is a great point. And the second is privacy by design, saying that how can you by design look at things, and if not required, don't keep information so that privacy obligations are not relevant for you. That's a great tip. Thank you so much, Puneet. Let me move to you, Manoj. What would be your recommendation? Let me not call it tip.
Okay, so my recommendation would be, I'm the strong believer of the contextualization. You need to understand the context of your organization and do what best can be done to make your environment cyber. Culture, it's another important aspect, the soft factor, I would say, but it is very, very important in terms of sharing the knowledge, impact, conducting regular sessions. That is very, very important in, in my opinion. And the third is, let's do what we do in the transformation journey, in the digital journey, technology journey, but the security should be, inbuilt, it's from the day one, it should be time, not should be that everything has been done. Now look from there.
Great points. I think context, you said it right. Don't just look at from lens of technology, look at from the lens of business and build the context. That's a great point, which I think everyone is looking. We not no longer looking at CIOs and CTOs just to be putting technology hat, but to put a business hat. So very well mentioned. Culture, I think, is fundamental for this entire thing to get transformed upon. And again, don't look at it as an add-on layer. Build it by design. I think great points. Thank you so much, Manoj, for making those. Pranav, anything from you?
I know. I think I definitely like the idea of cyber safe by design. I think that has to come in, because it is like, if by design you are not thinking about cyber safety or cyber security, then it's always an add-on. You can correct as many things as you want, but you'll keep adding something to the mistakes. So cyber safe by design is in my opinion, very, very important one. But to the professionals as well, I mean, people who are practicing cybersecurity, one more thing is, cyber from the business context is important. In the sense, cyber is not there to stop or hamper the business or stop them from doing certain innovative things, but it is also to provide a protective layer around what, how do you enable that business activity through at the time becoming cyber secure as well. That is important in my opinion.
Great points. And I just wanted to round up by thanking everyone for participating, sharing their perspectives. And I can tell you, it's very valuable when it comes on from practitioners just like yours, who have been seeing this happening every day around yourself. And you take those key business decisions on what to do, how to do, and what to be prioritized. I think that's really right up there. So thank you so much for being available, Puneet. I really appreciate you joining us from London. Manoj, thank you for your time. Much appreciated. All your insights and the context perspective which you brought upon, very, very relevant. Thank you so much for that. And Pranav, great insights which you were able to provide based on your professional experience working with various energy and natural resources companies. I'll again, from on behalf of KPMG, express my gratitude to each one of you. Thank you so much. Have a good day.
Thanks, everyone. Thank you, everyone. It was nice to be here.
Yeah. Thanks, Manoj. Bye.
Good morning, everyone. I'm